Hello everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here, back with another battle replay, and in the last one, someone requested that I try some Dark Elves out. So I played a couple games, got my butt handed to me a game or two in a row, just because I was I just really wanted to use the Charybdis. You know, with the whole sea monster video I just did, I was like, it would be very thematic for me to use the Charybdis since he was on that list, and we went in depth about him. But making a Charybdis work is a little difficult. So to go over Omni comps real quick, I'm going to let this play at normal speed because it takes a while for things to get going. My opponent has a Lithanar and two Shadow Warriors hiding in the back here. And what's really funny is a Lithanar's Fire at Will actually activated and he pegged my Charybdis in the butt, but I didn't notice. Which is really good for my opponent because if I had noticed, this would have been really bad really quick. But in any event, for my army, well, I guess we'll cover the rest of his army first. He's got a unit of Dragon Princes hiding in the forest. Then he's got 3 units of Spearmen with kind of an interesting mix of ranks. 2 on this one and 1 on this one. Then he's got 2 units of Sisters of Avalon, which are just a fantastic unit and super gorgeous animations. Probably one of the better units on the High Elf roster, both in appearance and ability. Then he's got a Handmaiden of the Everqueen, who's got both of her items and her reload skill ability, so she provides a ton of buffs to local troops. And then he also has a Noble who looks like he's completely naked, other than just being on an eagle. You know, which just gives you a really fast, decent armor-piercing character with, of course... oh, that's interesting. So he doesn't have anti-large when he's on his eagle. It's interesting, but I mean the Handmaiden still kind of picks that up. He also doesn't count as armor piercing either. It's kind of bizarre. He does have a pretty good armor piercing ratio though. Over here, while my opponent is being very patient, I've got 2 units of Cold One Knights with spears because High Elves tend to favor rather cav heavy or large dragons and stuff. So you do need a fairly significant amount of armor piercing anti-large. And then for my front line, I've got 2 units of Blackheart Corsairs, which are pretty good for dealing with High Elves. High Elves don't tend to have a ton of armor, so with them you get a nice anti-infantry bonus, and you have a really solid armor of 80, which is pretty awesome. Then to lead my army, I have the regular Supreme Sorceress. I've always been kind of more of a fan of generic characters, just because you tend not to see them as much, so I enjoy using them. I brought the Lore of Shadow version. She's got Melkos, Enfeebling Foe, and Pendulum, which is pretty typical. And then I have both of her items, including Arnzapal's Black Horror, which is probably the strongest wind spell in the game, but it has a cast time of 5 or 6 seconds. It's very easy for your opponent to dodge it. It also moves very slow, but if it hits, it can pretty much wipe out an entire army. Then I've got 2 units of Hargoneth Executioners, one of which is the Blaze of the Blood Queen to keep her alive. Then I've got a unit of Dread Spears in the back, 2 units of Dark Shards with shields, of course the lovely Charybdis, who we just did a little bit of a in-depth look on, and then a Bolt Thrower. If you haven't noticed, I haven't noticed his troops behind me yet, but he hasn't noticed my troops behind him yet, because I've got a group of Dark Riders back here. Because most High Elves, when they fight Dark Elves, bring, you know, Sisters of Avalon. So at this point, I was trying to, because I was down here, I was basically trying to wait until I could get my Bolt Thrower in range, so I could start the engagement, but he just got too close, so I decided to go ahead and just bull charge. And at this point, he doesn't focus fire very well. He kind of is seeming to just kind of shoot random spots. I go ahead and focus my Dark Shards on the Sword Masters, as well as a charge from the Cold Knights, because they, of course, don't have any charge defense against large. So they're able to do some pretty significant damage. I get an okay Overcast Pendulum. He noticed it, managed to dodge. But my infantry line starts crashing into his infantry line, and my guys are going to absolutely butcher his. It's about now that, yeah, now I've noticed him, and my Bolter is pretty much gone. So I send back these Dread Spears. I'm going to turn them around, basically just absorb fire. Charybdis doesn't really have a ton of targets, so I go ahead and tell him to come slamming in on the Dragon Princes. But the nice thing about the Charybdis is he's kind of a monster that you don't want to go super ham with, if you can avoid it, because that Abyssal Howl is really helpful for him just wandering around in the line and causing leadership debuff. So I do toss an Overcast Melkos and then Enfeebling Fall on the Dragon Princes, mainly to lower their melee defense so that the Charybdis can actually hit them, and then also lowering their speed, which coupled with his poison makes it so that, you know, they don't really stand a chance. Here, the Noble, probably mainly because he doesn't have as much armor piercing, it seems, on the Eagle, wasn't able to really defeat the Cold One Knights. He did do quite a bit of damage, but they absolutely just shred that line. And the Black Orc Corsairs won both of their fights easily, as well as the Executioner, just cutting through that High Elf infantry like it's just made out of butter. At this point, my Dark Riders are just running around trying to ping-pong the various Sisters of Avalorn. And I have seen this force here, but he took way too long to activate it. So I pretty much just commit my Dark Shards over here to just start pinging the Shadow Warriors and send forward the Spears to protect them so that they keep shooting, so they go to deal with the Lithanar. I do get an Overcast Melkots again to make sure that we lock down the Handmaiden, which between that and the poison, her speed is reduced to 69, but with the Abyssal Howl, her leadership just collapses, and she's just getting torn apart. And when she goes down, it kind of frees up all this nonsense to go chase off what's left. I start bringing my Sorceress down because he's standing in this beautiful line. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get off a Black Horror. I'm going to get off a Black Horror and just destroy him. But when this entire army shatters over here, because the Abyssal Howl causes everyone to just sort of scatter, and I had him outnumbered enough at this point that I could just chase everything. You'll notice what basically happens is that when that Handmaiden shatters right there, it causes a huge swing in the balance of power, and Elithanar and the Shadow Warriors just break. And you can see it was right there. It was ready to go off. But in any event, wasn't a super long fight, but, you know, I'm just trying to get little things out there on a day-to-day basis while I work on other things. So, if you would like to see a specific faction in the next video, please list it down below so I know what to try. You know, especially if you're looking for like a certain thematic build or what have you. In any event, the Sorceress did really well. Shadow is more of a support lore. I did overcast the Pendulum, but unfortunately it makes a very distinct sound and my opponent noticed it. We had very similar army sizes, but unfortunately my opponent invested a ton of resources into those Shadow Warriors and they just showed up way too late. It would have been much better to have them constantly harassing. He did manage to do a decent amount of damage to the Supreme Sorceress just by shooting her with the Moonbow, but, you know, these Shadow Warriors showed up so late to the party, by the time they got there, half or 70% of his army was dead. The Black Ark Corsairs absolutely butchered the Spearmen. That's a perfect matchup for them. The Harkonneth Executioners absolutely butchered the Spearmen as well. Like, there was just no threat to them besides the Swordmasters. But the Swordmasters got wombo comboed by the Cold One Knights and the Charybdis, which, taking a really nasty charge, which, you know, these guys both gained these guys gained 2 chevrons, these guys gained 1. I put 1 chevron on both these, so they both gained an additional chevron. You know, they were just butchering people, and, you know, they took an initial volley from the Dark Shards, which added in a leadership penalty. Then they took a nasty charge from the Cold One Knights, who caused fear, and then, of course, a Terror Causer ran in there with the Abyssal Howl, which causes further leadership debuff. So the Swordmasters just buckled and ran away, and then at that point, he only had the Dragon Princes to defend his entire back line, which between the Charybdis, the 2 Cold One Knights, and the Dark Riders, there was just too much. You know, there was really no way for the High Elves to hold me off. They needed those Shadow Warriors supporting their army, like, way faster. As for his army, everything performed pretty below par. The Dragon Princes did okay, considering how much I threw at them. You know, an Overcast Melkoths to slow them down, and also an Enfeebling Foe. They managed to catch and kill a few units, but, you know, the Shadow Warriors actually got a surprising amount of kills for how late they showed up. So did Elithanar, but, you know, it's just too little too late. The Dark Elves have struck down the Batman of the High Elves on this day. But in any event, I hope you guys enjoyed the battle. We'll have more every day. And if you'd like to see anything in particular, let me know. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.